So I'm so happy to be here again. It seems like it was interesting last time in Spanish, so they asked me to repeat in English. So I'm very excited because for me this topic is never ending. Regretfully, in terms that I start working with this social problem many years ago, and we are still here. We have doing a lot of advance. I remember that many years ago we only think about international as an international problem, and now we are pretty clear that this problem happened here in our backyard. So this is a huge advance, and also in terms of the law, we have so many progress, and that's good. Um, so I hope that, this morning we can share um, all of the ideas and thoughts. Because, like I say in my classes, we learn together. I don't like to be, listening only myself. I want to be this very opening and sharing. But let's go back and start. My name is Virginia Tenias de Lopez. I'm social work master level. I got my master at Rutgers University in New Jersey. Um, I just study, my focus having always violence against women and children. I got a certificate in this topic, and also I did a certification of child development, desarrollo de niños, in Michigan. Originally, I'm from Venezuela, an attorney. I graduated in Venezuela as a lawyer. But even I graduated as a lawyer in my country, I always was working in the social work field. I support children who were exposed to community violence, family violence, and then sexual abuse, child abuse in general. So right now I moved to Orlando maybe almost 3 years, getting in the four. And I started in management maybe 1.5 years right now. And I'm so excited and very grateful for this opportunity. I used to teach in Brunswick at Rutgers, trauma for violence in the childhood. And also I was a field liaison or field instructor at Rutgers. So I came with this, excitement to Orlando and getting this opportunity to share with um, management students. For me is so wonderful because we are Latinos, so I'm so excited to share with our young generation, all of our expertise and experience. So in my personal, I'm married with a beautiful boy. My son, my husband, we are our family. And I used to be foster mother for many years in New Jersey. And Dylan came from the system when he was 5 months. Right now he's 10. And we are so grateful to be his parents. And so what I can say, I mean, this is me. And I love to share what I know. And I hope that this morning we can, get together with a little more idea about human trafficking. And I'm so happy that the university promote this informative training because I remember when I used to teach, human trafficking can happen anywhere to anyone. Um, and regretfully, I have, witnessed that we have human trafficking even in our campus. Sometimes we don't realize, we think like it's not possible, but it is. So having this topic today for me is important because we can identify potential victims. We can identify survivors that they had not received help. And so I think we need to be prepared. and be open to realize that that can happen in our campus, our college campus. Right now, in January, we celebrate the awareness month for human trafficking. So I think it's also the day that it chose was January 11th, and we used to wear blue color. Um, but I think it's important. It's important indeed. I cannot, I stopped practicing when I move because of these license issues. But even when I'm in class, I always try to, you know, it's in us, when you have the expertise, you cannot stop making assessment and look at people and say, but I had the chance to see someone who was, and in private, I approached to her and, and give some good referrals to get help. So that's the most important for us as instructors or facilitators, is to be helpful for our own people, and and even for our coworkers. Who knows, anyone can be, so I think this is a great opportunity for us to get more information that help us to help others. So if you have any questions so far, please just raise your hands. I have to be honest, I'm not multitask. I cannot see the chat. That's something that I regret, not having someone who helped me with that. But when you just jump and ask the question or interrupt myself, that's fine. Also, in the last training, I received a lot of emails asking questions, and I'm more than happy to answer to you. And I remember someone asked me one question, and I didn't see his name, and I had not been able to respond, and that made me sad. But if I cannot see your chat, please just ask the question. Or you can send an email and I will be responding to you. Any question, any suggestion for discussions, I'm more than happy. Okay?
Professor
Yes.
Tenias, is Dr. Janet Carrasquillo. It's very important that if anyone has a question, you can write in the chat, because the chat is going to be recorded as well. And we can answer back their questions, okay? So
Excellent.
we are very proud of your presentation today. And for the School of Liberal Arts and the School of Behavioral Sciences now, that is the new name, we are honored to have you as supervised coordinator of the practice of bachelor degree level and master degree level students. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't know where we're going to go in when you invite me to come, but I'm so happy, really. So anyway, so today the title is Challenges of Human Trafficking, but to be honest with you, I just wanna share as much information and I can share in this morning. So like I said before, we're gonna be able to have some tools, some information that help us to help others, and be aware, that can happen in our own backyard, including our campus or campuses, because I know that there are some in Puerto Rico and Dallas. So I just want to start with this positive affirmation from Nelson Mandela. I always in my classes try to start with some affirmation that help our students, to see why we are here and why we are educating ourselves. And education, based on Mandela words, is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. So if we know what is human trafficking, if even the basic, if we review and share, our experiences, even a movie that we have been watching, so we are going to be able to really make possible changes. And sometimes, we believe that everybody knows, but my experience since I started this, I think one of um, my thesis for my certification in violence against women was, my first presentation was about human trafficking in adolescents. Um, because I noticed that there were so many adolescents, especially adolescents in the youth system, in the DCF system, the runaways, that they were vulnerable and they were easily victims of for the perpetrator of human trafficking. So if we educate ourselves, we can educate others, and we are going to be, spreading the word that this is a problem that exists and we need to be able to stop. And I like it because I remember years ago that we see the victim as a criminals and criminal of prostitution, and we never, the law enforcement, even social workers, we saw, she is an or he is an perpetrator or prostitution. And then, we realized that we have to see these human beings as a victims, because they are victims, and we need to treat them as a victim. So judges cannot be penalizing them as a criminal and taking them away from services and putting in the same page of the perpetrator. So that was possible because we educated ourselves. We understood the dynamic of this problem, and we understood that we need to help the victims and make prevention programs, and may also persecutor to the perpetrator and the ones who buy, these services. So so our objective for today is to understand a definition, what is human trafficking, and especially for me, um, I, to grasp who could be potential victims of human trafficking, identify the population who are vulnerable to human trafficking, because I believe that prevention is the best. I really if encouraged to and advocate for social programs and for policies that focus more on prevention, um, because in that way we could help a lot of human beings to be trafficked. So we are also going to discuss some red flags. Like I say, for me, is so have been so valuable to understand the indicators, because I can be able to connect people, survivors, to the services. And even like I say, in my own house, when you hire someone to help you with the garden, and you can see some red flags, and or you go in a hotel or you go in a restaurant, or you can identify if where to look for. We also want to see the mentality of the victim, because like I said before, it was very important to not to blame the survivor, not to blame the victims. Uh, it's the same with the domestic violence dynamic and power and control. And many times we don't understand why the victim stay, even though they can see the suffering, the pain, but they are not able to live, to break that cycle. So we need to understand in order to stop blaming. And this is for me, this is the foundation, understand the dynamic, to help them. And of course, become familiar with the resources that are available, and in that way we can respond more effectively. So far so good. I cannot see the chat, because if I press the button, maybe I'm gonna lose you guys. Okay. In this slide, I just wanna share with you something about our state enterprise, the visual information that we get from Hollywood, from the media, and indeed it's true that the human trafficking implying kidnapping, physical coercion or force. But it's not the only way. It's not the only. If you go and Google and search for human trafficking, I'm gonna be finding a picture like this. And what we try, the advocates for to stop human trafficking, is that we get a sense that human trafficking is not just the taking movie, the beautiful girl that, who is kidnapping and getting in this international ring, or only the bad guys that are from Middle East. We wanna, as an advocate, to expand and see that even and a family and a relative, even in a friend, even and a husband, even a boyfriend can be, a charming and getting the victim just through the process of grooming. So we cannot be just saying, oh no, this is not human trafficking because, he's very nice and he looks, it is good. No, we have to show also a picture of famous people, rich people that also can be perpetrator, and even beggings on the street, they can be victims. So this is the idea of this slide, to expand. I don't know if anyone have comments about this. Any comment? Okay. Okay, I just wanna share this because let me see. Okay, I just wanna be sharing with you this mm, a problem that we have as an advocate, because the idea is, like I said before, that we expand the although this happen, that can happen, it's not just linked the human trafficking with violence, or just necessarily one type of nationality or countries. Uh, you can find it anywhere and in any form. Okay, so let's go to start with the definition. So we have a great year in 2000 when we get for the first time an international instrument from the United Nations that define or provide a definition of human trafficking. And we as an advocate, I mean, think about 2000, we were so excited that, we got it. We got it, have this universal agreement about what is human trafficking. And it's very important because human trafficking, the person can be moving from one country to another final country. And there were no at the time and a universal legal instrument that allowed different countries to go, together to stop this. So having this encouraged the member of the United Nations to get their own law, their own instruments, and in that way, everybody is going to be preventing, going to be providing services, and also we are going to be able to prosecute her in a cohesive way. So the instrument for the international instrument, and I have to be, I just want to clarify, although I'm an attorney from Venezuela, I'm not an attorney in US, so it's not my intention to give any the legal advice or legal information, because I don't have license to do that. But in terms of advocate, I can share with you what is there and to grasp the understanding. So, so this instrument is the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking of people, especially women and children, because like we discussed as an introduction, the perpetrator of human trafficking, they look for the vulnerable, and for those who are in vulnerable conditions. And one of them is being minorities, being for genders, and also children. And we're going to see more vulnerability in other slides. So the interesting thing is that this protocol provide the definition of trafficking in person, and define the actions, define the means, and also the purpose. So what is the actions, or what the perpetrator activities they do in order to perform or to do this crime? So through recruitment, transport, transfers, harboring, or restrictions of person. And so this is the medium, the way that they do it, and by using force or other form of coercion, fraud, and so abuse of power or vulnerability on the granting or receipt of payment or benefits to obtain the consent of a person having authority over other. So here we see that we find two of the main elements that in order to identify we are in the human trafficking, which is the way that they do it, and also the action that they do it. So that is force, fraud, or coercion, and also has to be a benefit for them. Okay, and and this definition in terms of the purpose, so they are clear to have labor exploitation and also sexual exploitation. And we can see also in this definition in the number B, in letter B, that the consent for the victim is not taken in consideration. So even if the victim say, okay, yes, I want to work for you, I'm going to be living in that condition, it doesn't matter in terms of this instrument. So and that's very important to understand, because because victims of any type of this crime, we understand that they are in trauma, and we understand the way that they function is not to, as a mechanism of defense, is to really create a bond with the perpetrator. So it's very important also to understand here that any child under any child, and we know that children, based on international law and domestic law, we understand person under the age of 18, most of the states, we agree in that. So any child under the age of 18 is automatically considered a human trafficking victim of the sexual trafficking. So for interesting here in the international definition, they don't make that differentiation, but when we see in United States, we have that differentiation. So we were so happy because this is the minimum that all of the state members of the United Nations were going to reflect in their own instruments or legal instrument. So this is our from the federal level. So the Trafficking Victim Protection Act of 2000, you see, so we got the United Nations, and then we got our own federal instrument, and define the severe form of human trafficking as a two main way, sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And again, sex trafficking recollect the idea that sex trafficking is recruitment, clandestine consignment, transportation, probation, procurement, sponsorship, or solicitation of a person for the purpose of a commercial sexual act. And we are going to see in detail because this definition has so many components. So, and again, the definition include the element of force, fraud, or coercion. And this definition for sex trafficking, they clarify that any child under 18 is per se victim of sex trafficking, no matter if the perpetrator didn't use coercion, fraud, or force. If it's a minor, that is gonna be, that person is gonna be, that child is gonna be an sex trafficking victim. For labor trafficking, we are gonna find that the main difference is, of course, the purpose. It's not gonna be a commercial sexual act. It's gonna be involuntary servitude, peonage, and debt budgets of slavery. I just wanna point one thing. And just wanna see that the international definition also include the the trafficking of the organs. So here in our definition of human trafficking at the federal level, we don't specify that. Okay, we just focus on sex trafficking and labor trafficking. I just want to clarify that. It's a crime, but it's not going to be in the level of the human trafficking. It's another type of crime. So so here, I just want to focus on the three elements of the human trafficking that we saw already in the two main definitions, and it's the actions, the means, and the purpose. Indeed, we have this model when we work with human trafficking, and you only need at least one of these definition for each column. So if you get a person that have been recruited, have been forced for commercial or sex trafficking, is a human traffic victim. So you don't have to have the three means or the perpetrator have been using all of the action. It's just enough one of each category of the elements, and you're going to be having the concept of the human trafficking. And again, you can see here the minors, they are going to be a victim of sex trafficking, even though the perpetrator didn't use force, fraud, or coercion. So I just want to clarify the definition because it's so complex. So the commercial sex means any sexual act, any way that imply an a sexual activity. It could be pornography. It could be on the street. It could be any act of sexual activity. And it's very important that the person, the victim, receive the perpetrator and receive any something of value, the victims, I'm sorry. So it could be house, it could be food, it could be clothes, it could be money, it could be education. That's the one that I used to have a client that she was a college student, and the perpetrator was paying for the tuition, and really, and she was forced to do sex activity in order to get paid for the tuition, and then she go deeply in this dynamic and be forced. So something that start by just going and accompanying someone and ending to be forced to have sex. So so anything that the person receives something of value, drugs also. I have so many cases that even here in Florida, we go this ring of the insurance fraud, where there were behind this, there were a ring of sex trafficking, and then they recruited um, young people with addiction problem in order to supposedly provide services for the addictions, but they were just recruiting in that way the victim to get involved in sex trafficking. So, so that's very important to understand. Sometimes people say, but Virginia, you know, she is a prostitute, she's doing voluntarily, she's receiving pay for that. And she's a sex trafficking victim. She came from another country. No, I mean, if she's not forced, if she can have a regular life, if she just collecting money for what she's doing, that's not sex trafficking. Okay, remember that has to have one of the meaning, the force, the fraud, or coercion. And sometimes people say, okay, but she was recruited, you know, to do modeling, and she went to Spain, and she is, when she go there, you know, she said, yes, when I'm modeling, even new pictures. And, but when as soon as she go there, she was forced to have sex. They took the passport. She cannot just be, you know, allowed to go out. So that is fraud, because she was, you know, saying that she was doing something, and when she go there, she ending having sex um, for food, for house, for being in Spain, for example. And they even they coerce her that she doesn't do what they ask. They are gonna be you know, hurting her family on her original country. So that's different. That's a human trafficking. Even though that maybe she, you know, she say, okay, I'm gonna go there to do dances, new dance or whatever. But as soon as she go there, she was forced and she was coerced to do sex commercial act. Okay, make sense? Any question? Okay. So in terms of the to have more comprehensions of the meanings of these elements, so I just want to pay attention on these the means of the force, fraud, and coercion. So force is what we saw in the first picture. Usually, you know, what we as the media portray as a human trafficking, it does physical restraint, physical harm, sexual assault, and beatings. Okay, that's one of the you know, of the actions that we can see. But also it could be for fraud. So at the beginning, maybe it's just false promises regarding to employment, working condition, love, marriage, a better life. So so many we see regretfully in Latin America that we you know, have so many people willing to come here for better lives, to come to United States for better life. And so, and as soon as they come here, you know, maybe this company is recruiting them to come, and they promise to pay $20, you know, per hours. And so they pay the ticket to come, and even they gave the visa, the temporary, the working visa to come here. And as soon as they go here, they collect the passport and they put it into working another type of work and the job, and also they, rather than pay 20, they pay $3, and they keep them in a house in a bad condition. So that's wrong. Okay, so there was no physical harm or beatings, but there was an false promises to come here and be treated respectfully. Coercion, it could be, when they really just receive threats, that something bad's going to happen to them, or something bad is going to happen to others. Let's see that they come for fraud, and then the coercion start. If you don't do here, we are going to call immigration, and you're going to be spending time in jail because you are undocumented, and blah 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 blah. And we know your family, we know where they are, we know your daughter or your son, and then we are gonna be hurting them. So all of three can be together, or just is enough to have one of them. Okay. uh, right now we can see there are different types, and one of them, for example, we can see so many family desperate to come and provide better life for the kids, and as soon as when they get here, uh, they are forced to begging on the street and to pay for what they are receiving. So we have to pay attention when we see people on the street asking, because maybe they are victim of human trafficking. So here is the action used by the human trafficker, like I said before. Okay, so it's very important to clarify here that it's not necessarily human trafficking imply that we move the person for one place or another place. It's not necessarily an element that if you don't have it, you don't have human trafficking. No, transportations can happen, but it's not necessary. So it's very important because sometimes we have, like I say, uh, the victim has never lived in the area. What we see in my practice, what we see a lot, is the perpetrator, they move the victims just to prevent to be caught. So I remember one case that they have two or three girls, and they were moving her around the state. So just to prevent, to maybe getting suspicion, the neighborhoods, something, so they move around. I remember another case that these girls came from Africa. So and with a promise to have better educations, better life. And so the mother, the parents in Africa allowed them to come with a lady that was close to them. And as soon as she got to New Jersey, they were kept forced to work in a beauty salon. Um, and the girl were living in a bad conditions. The passport were cut. They didn't speak fluently English, so they didn't go to the school. And it was hard for the law enforcement to get them because the perpetrator were moving the girls around the state. Um, so um, recruitment, they look for this orientation of vulnerability and to be able to create the emotional bonding. So that's very important. And that's where something, when we discuss this topic, we say that the best way to prevent is to protect the vulnerable and to end, to end many times with this social problem that makes someone vulnerable. Um, and it's important for the perpetrator to make this bond with the victim, and it's so deeply, and we're going to see later. But what is difficult to work, at least my experience, and what the readings and the literature say about this issue, is that these victims, it's not just one trauma. It's not just the fact to be trafficked. is the vulnerability that they already have, this trauma, this past trauma that they can have for other reasons. It could be child abuse, it could be violence at home, it could be community violence. So it's so deep. Um, the trauma, the complex trauma that this person brings, that can you imagine then go involved in human trafficking? So um so that's what the recruiters, the perpetrators, the traffickers are aware of, and they, make this emotional bonding. So that's what I just want to put the first slide about the pictures, because um what we expect is to be, kidnapped and trapped, but really what they look for is that vulnerable person and create a net of safety, that they can support them, that they can love them, that they can, those are the trauma that they have, they're going to be able to support them to have better life. And that's the way that they are trapped, you know. So isolations and constantly monitoring them is there, and that's something that we can pay attention. I mean, when I was teaching um, in New Jersey, uh, I couldn't avoid. To pay attention to some students that I can see that they were young, that that this stage that you go out and have fun and be involved in your college life, and I can see some of them isolated, that there was always a lady waiting for her, so suspicious. I mean, you can think of maybe, if you don't know about the hour, this is the mother or this is whatever person, but that's a red flag. That's something that is there. And you see so many training for the medical area. You see the assessment is, having the patient, having the client, have this interview alone with the medical staff. It's the same, when we are as a social worker, and we see that our client maybe, is scared to talk. I used to work in the DCF, and I remember one young guy that was running away from the system as a foster kid, and I remember that he was so afraid, because he was in a trafficking. He was trafficked by a gang member, forcing him to sell drugs. So, and he was always constantly being checked where he was, and isolated for families and friends. So that's a clue for us to understand who could be a victim of labor trafficking or sexual trafficking. Transportation, like I say, include, but it's not necessarily the only thing. Movement or organization is trouble. When I was in New Jersey, I go so many girls that came from the border and go to New Jersey because they're gonna go to Nevada, and that Nevada prostitution is legal, but not the street one. So there was so many girls who came for better life, and we see in that this was included, the transportation of them. So providing, including giving to another person. Okay, so we have a case that a niece was under the guardian of the uncle, and the uncle was using her for getting money, sexually trafficking her for money. And this was a famous case, I believe. So there was involved an ex NFL player, and so So that includes, so giving the person to another. So getting include taking by force, exchanging something for the ability to control. Any question? Any comment? Let's see. Again, someone wrote here something. Okay. Someone wrote here, Professor Rodolfo Bello. Human trafficking has a heavy financial and human suffering, and it's recurring phenomenon. A lot of money often more. Yes, and we're going to see that. That's true, Professor. Excellent point. This is about money. This is about being greedy. And let me tell you, this is cheaper and more financial revenue than selling drugs. And so cheaper because they don't spend in the victims. They just confine them in a poor conditions. And so there's no one that is looking for that person. So maybe it's a missing child from the system, from the DCF system, maybe, and a parents that they don't pursue for locate the child or the person. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This is the point, that this is a very demanding, especially in the labor, in the sex trafficking, that make a lot of people rich. So yeah, you are right. It's not just about a pedophile or someone who, no, this is about money. Uh, Absolutely. Okay, so we can see from Polaris, which is an organization that have been working with human trafficking for many years, and they provide us with excellent data, excellent information, and we can see, uh, the same way that the human trafficking, domestic violence, this is about power and control. Okay, so this is the dynamic using by the perpetrator, and they can be using any way possible to control this victim. And it's very important that we understand the fear factors. So victims really feel afraid of the perpetrator. So there has been so traumatized that they are not able to flee. They're living in this conflict and in the brain, um, between stay and leaving. And at one point, they are so afraid of the perpetrator that they stay for years. And someone asked me once, so how long take to the victim, to recover? That, I mean, if you research and you can see that it is hard to find an agreement in the research, because it will depend. First of all, as a clinician, is is based on each client, and it's based on the history of the trauma. That's where one of the main best approach is the trauma informed care, because it's not just about being victim of trafficking. It's pretty sure that this person has a history of trauma. So we can see here in this wheel that Polaris offer us, that they use coercion and threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, and isolation, minimizing, denying or blaming. Um, so sexual abuse, not only that maybe they are exposed to, to be sold, but sold, but are also raped by the perpetrator, by the traffickers. So um, I heard once of the survivors saying once that one of the threats that the perpetrator say is to her was, "Oh, you do it, or I'm gonna find 4 guys to have sex with you for just $20." So for her, it was, I mean, so many things, because it was a threat to be raped for different people, and also for for her saying, "I'm not worthy," that he can do it just for $20. I remember saying many times, 4 guys was going to rape me just for $20. So um, so it's not just being a sex trafficking, a commercial act, but also that was a threat to be abused, sexually abused. And the emotional abuse that was humiliated, how you know in her mind she say, "I'm not valuable, even just he can sell me just for $20." Um, so there is not a single method. Very much, I mean, every time we can find a new way. Um, so sometime in my original country, regretfully, many years ago, because I moved 20 years ago. But before that, when I was working there, I remember many cases where there were poor areas. The parents just sell the oldest kids for feeding the youngest one. So they sacrifice the oldest one for bring food to the youngest. Um, so they use anything that they can find. So we have to be aware where to look for. And labor trafficking, the main type that we can find, or the way that we can find from the perpetrator is, make the victim to get in debt, so that they need to be working for them. And you can be combined, you can see cases, the labor trafficking and sex trafficking together many times. So, and like I say, in these cases, the death penalty is, you have cases when, I remember and a client who came to the United States, and she was forced to work for nothing. I mean, she really get paid like $10, but also at the same time, she owed all of the money for expensive for the traveling, for the visa process, and that she has to pay to the employer. The domestic servitude, you can see so many cases that even, people who have diplomatic titles, that they bring the person and to work at home, and they don't receive any pay, and they are in some way forced to be there, and they even don't understand the dynamic where they are, uh, why they cannot go out, that they cannot be doing, but that can happen. Okay. So we have, and the pageant is very similar, but it's when the perpetrator really get the victim to get in debt with them, and increase or make that debt with them, in that way that that victim feel forced to stay with them. So that's and forced child labor, even though mm, mm, there is no per se, the definition per se didn't say that any child involved in, in labor is not a human trafficking, because children can work based on protection of the law. But if the child have been forced, if the child have been, coerced to work, so that could be labor trafficking, even though. But you have to prove that the child have been forced, that the child have been coerced, so that there is any fraud in that labor relationship, because children can work under the conditions that the law established for them. Okay. Let me see if we have any other comments here. I'm trying to see at the same time because you are so quiet. Okay, I cannot see any comment. Any question? Okay, I'm gonna make question. So we see in 2017, Polaris conducted an research, and this belonged to part of the report of Polaris report about 25 type of the modern slavery that we call human trafficking, or they call human trafficking today. And we see different types of places in where you can find victims. So, or victims can be forced in these places. You can find escort services, you can have in the beauty salon, in the nail polish salon. You can see the outdoors residential, domestic work is something. Bars, strip clubs, and cantina was the one who really touched me, because most of my clients, who some of them were college students, they were forced to be working in the bar, strip clubs, and cantina. So pornography, traveling sales crew, restaurants, food services, begging, something that concerned me to see on the street sometimes. Lady with children, even just after school, you can see that in some places here in Orlando, and they're concerned. Agriculture, animal, personal sexual servitude, health, beauty services, construction, hotel. That's right now we have a good program for the hotel staff to be training how to recognize potential victims of sexual trafficking. Landscaping, that's very important. Landscaping, sometimes it's sad to see people looking for a cheap hour labor, and we forget that that we can have potential victims there. We also have arts entertainment. It's amazing in the carnivals. There are some statistics that say that there are a lot of immigrants, young people working in the carnivals, and it's perfect because they move from one place to another place, and they are packed in that type of activities. Commercial cleaning services. We see factories, manufacturing. There are so many interesting cases. We have one famous case, I think it was in Ohio, and a turkey factory that was that recruited, I don't remember exactly the amount of the person, but there were several people with cognitive disability. So they were just recruiting with fraud, and then keep it with force and threats for many years, many years, in a horrible conditions, forcing to work for this factory. So we have healthcare, we have recreational facility. So you see there are so different activities, different industry. It's not just we think about the bad guys, like a typical gang members or drug dealer. Is no, it could be anyone. It could be any industry. We can have this present, regretfully. So we have here, there are some statistics that say what is the 5 more typical industry in where we can find victims of trafficking from Latin America and the Caribbean in the United States. And again, we can see in agriculture area, we can find that we have 50% from people from Latin America and Caribbean being in labor trafficking in this field. And we have domestic work, 30%. And in construction, we have 48.5%, and we have restaurants 27, and escort services 1.7. And it's interesting because at the same time, it's showing us that most of the victims of these escort services are U.S. victims. So, and most of them are children, and most of them are young girls. So that's something that is interesting to know. Sometimes people ask me, but Virginia, we say a lot of human trafficking with containers, with or in the border with the coyotes. So there's human trafficking. We have to be careful, knowing the difference between human trafficking and human smuggling. Okay, because human smuggling, the person, they consent to come here in that way. So the transition is mutual, and they end when they arrive here or when they arrive in the final destination. So smuggling is a crime committed against the country and involve illegal transportation. The person crossed at the national border. So smuggling is always transnational. So this is the main difference with human trafficking. How human trafficking is like we have been seen, is has to be the 3 elements, but it has to be force, or has to be fraud or coerce, or all of 3 into trafficking. And so the victim, maybe they can give at the beginning consent, but if the traffickers exploit them for work, for services, or commercial sex, it's gonna be human trafficking. Okay, so human trafficking is a crime committed against an individual. Smuggling is against the country, and trafficking doesn't have to involve a physical movement. Okay, it could be transnational or it could be national, but the smuggling has to be transnational. Okay, so any questions so far? I just wanna force you to speak. Oh my goodness, I'm concerned. You are so quiet. Okay, so this is a case scenario. So let's see if we are grasping everything that I have been sharing with you. So who wanna help me to read this scenario? Anyone wanna help me?
I can help you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
A recruiting agency in India was looking for welders to work at a company in the United States for $10 an hour. The agency charged each prospective worker a non-refundable of $2,500 application fee. En route to the United States, the workers were given contracts to sign. The contracts obligated the workers to work for the next 6 months for less than $3 per hour. They were told to sign the contracts or they would be sent back home. The workers felt that they could not back out because they had invested all their savings and were already on their way to the United States. Once they arrived, they were confined to the factory grounds, and the owner of the company kept their passports. Questions. Oh, question. Were the migrants smuggled or trafficked?
Thank you, Professor Perez. Appreciate it. Okay, so I open the question. What do you think it is? Okay, take your time. You want to read again the case and let me know what do you think. Is it smuggled or the immigrant have been trafficked? Trafficking or smuggling? What do you think?
I believe it's trafficking. This is Professor Jimenez from Tampa.
Oh, thank you, Professor Jimenez. You say trafficking.
I agree. Traffic.
Anyone has any different thought about? If I can ask Professor Perez, Professor Diaz, I think, what was the raciocinio that you got this the answer? What was the element or the factor that you see that help you to see the difference?
For me, the transaction of money for the work. That's my they're trafficking people for money.
Okay.
Another thing that I would like to add would be the fact that the company keeps their passport and obligate them to sign the contract. Otherwise, they want to be sent it back to home.
Yeah, you both are right. Exactly. So this is the red flags. This is the coercion. So, okay, we see here the fraud because they were promised $10 the hour, like Professor Perez was saying, and then when they go here, it was obligated just for 3 per hour. So they were betrayed. It was a lie. You know, there was no really an honor to keep the contract. So maybe they're not gonna come for $3 per hour. And what Professor Jimenez says is completely right. So they were coerced because they say, you don't do this, you are gonna be sending back home. And also they are gonna be, they're gonna be losing more in their mind because if they go back, they invest the money. So, you know, and the other point that Professor Jimenez say was excellent. They kept the passport. Okay, they were confined in a factory ground, and also they remove from them the ID and the way that they can identify themselves if they decided to run away. Excellent. So you see the elements that we discussed before has to be present. Coercion, fraud, force, and exactly, you know, and it's gonna help us to really grasp the concept or the definition of human trafficking. Thank you for the participation. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Okay, okay, this is another one. Let's see if we can do this.
I can read that one for you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Jimenez. I appreciate it.
It says, Mario wanted to come to the United States to work in construction and send money home to his family. He paid a smuggler $3,000 to facilitate his illegal entry through the southwest border. Mario crossed the border with a group of other illegal immigrants. Once they reached the United States, the smuggler took them to a safe house and demanded an additional $10,000 for each migrant before he would release them. The smuggler locked the migrants in a basement, deprived them of food and water, and beat them. The smuggler told Mario he would kill Mario's family in Mexico if he did not pay the ransom. The smuggler and his friends raped the family migrants, and the smuggler threatened additional abuse if the women did not pay the $10,000. Question: were the migrant smuggled or trafficked?
Take your time. Read again if you want.
If I may, ma'am,
Sure.
I would say it was both smuggled and trafficked. The fact that they agreed to take Mario's agreed for this person to take him through the border, that's the smuggling part. But the fact that they take them and lock them on a place and request more money and threaten them to make damage their families, that would be the trafficking part.
Mhm. Any other? Thank you, Professor Jimenez. Thank you so much for your participation. Any other comments or thoughts? Man, there is no way that it's just sharing here together. We are just learning, and I'm fascinated when someone, can, oops, sorry, I guess. Anyone want to share before we, okay. Well, Professor Jimenez is right. I mean, the first part is clear that this is a smuggling. The Mario agreed to come and pay, through the border. But we, as this information that we have, we cannot 100% say that we have human trafficking. Why? Because it's true that Mario has been forced to stay deprived of freedom, and they have been without no food, water, and beaten. It's true that could be kidnapping, but in order to say that human trafficking, Mario has to go outside, work for them, and bring money to them. Okay? So remember when we say that he's forced to to work, he's forced to do one of the type of labor activity for the traffickers. So here Mario is kept. Mario is not going out to work for them or doing something for them. Maybe they keep there and say, okay, now you have to uh, work here, keeping doing package, and doing some maybe agriculture stuff. So, but they are not doing anything. They are just locked there, and they are not doing something value for the any activity, commercial or sex activity or commercial labor activity for the traffickers. In rate of the female, look at this. They say, or you pay or you're gonna be raped for him and for his friends. He's not selling the girls to the friends. He's not selling the girls, the ladies, to other person. And he's just saying, pay me the $10,000 more, or you're gonna be raped. If the smugglers say to the lady, now you're gonna pay me 10,000 more, and then you are gonna be having sex until you pay for that, that will be different. So to be honest with the Professor Jimenez, I will say the same that he said, because the case didn't provide us with the detail how they are gonna forcing them to get the money. But you see the critical thinking about human trafficking. So we have to be asking more information to be sure that we have human trafficking. Okay, that we have 100%, because this is a type of crime that is specific with the elements, the force, the coercion, and the fraud, but also the way that the perpetrator has and the purpose. And the purpose has to be money. Someone say this is a money in terms that I sell the victim to others. I get services from the victim by working the farmer, by working in the as a domestic servitude, by something services that I get from them. But if I kept just Mario in a house in a locked without doing anything, that's a crime, absolutely. But it's not gonna be human trafficking because there is not that piece of making money through him, making something through him that make money for the trafficker. It makes sense. I just wanna get feedback from you guys. It makes sense what I'm saying? Professor Jimenez, Professor Perez, I know that they are being with
Yeah,
me.
yes, it is. I mean, it makes sense. However, that
Okay.
thing also it's that will be then count as a crime also, but that will be falling into the kidnapping part, or it could be fall also into the trafficking. Well, not the trafficking, just the kidnapping.
Mm-hmm. Yes. As soon as we have this sketch, we don't have more information. I will say so, Professor. Professor, I agree with you. It could be a crime, absolutely. This would be a kidnapping, and they were doing the smuggling part. But absolutely, it's a kidnapping and rape, because if they rape the ladies, is sexual assault. Okay. No. So far, based on the information, we cannot stay 100% human trafficking, but if the friends and the smuggler, rape the lady, also it's going to be sexual abuse, sexual assault.
Interesting.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for helping me, okay? Because that's the way that I learn from you. You learn from everybody, from me too. Thank you so much. Okay, so who is a victim of human trafficking? Anyone can be victim of human trafficking. Anyone. Children, elderly, boys, girls, anyone. So, but like I said before, the traffickers, they are looking for the vulnerabilities. As much vulnerability the person have, that's gonna be a better victim for or pray for them. Okay, so in my experience and what the literature say, it's really weird find a victim that they identify themselves as a victim. Okay, um, because of the bond with the perpetrator, because a sense of the state, I did this for choice, as a mechanism of protection. Uh, is is something that when we work with them is something that slowly safe for them, but we have to start uh, helping them in to grasp what happened. Okay, and that is not their fault, but they are in that situation. So that's part where we use the contemplation, the stages of where the client is. So we have to explore where the client is. Pre-contemplation, contemplation, action to prepare, maintain, what is the stage that he is. There is no a profile that we can say here, okay, this is not a victim. No, it could be anyone, okay? And what I got and I have been, trained about is most of them when they, you know, get involved with the traffickers, they dreams a better life. So no one wanna be hurt. I mean, in my experience, I never found any domestic violence victim or human trafficking victim saying I was, aware that I was going to go and being suffering this much pain. They were there because they believe that that could be a better life, and that what the perpetrator used to trap them. Okay, In that way, it is very similar, the dynamic of human trafficking and domestic violence survivors. So it's very similar, the way that they are manipulated by the abuser or the perpetrator, and easier for them to, the perpetrator, is easier for them to use the victim. This is some of the vulnerability, and for those who work in the area and social work, we can see that I wish to have a magic band, and erase this problem from the work. But as much as we have this problem, we are going to have, human trafficking. So physical needs, housing, food, uh, life conditions. So, hello, that's something that we can see in many countries, suffering for poor conditions, poverty, and even our own country, United States. Regretfully, we have a lot of people living under this definition of poverty. Addictions, this is something that there is a video that I will suggest it to you. Is the chauffeurs insurance company in Florida, how they recruited these persons with addictions around the United States and come to Florida, for good places to recover after Obamacare was approved, and the President Obama approved this law in where person with addiction can be covered by the insurance. So, oh my gosh, so that was so happy for us that we were working in the field, but at the same time, these traffickers use this to recruit the person with addictions, and trafficking them, especially in the sex trafficking. So I have a case I'm going to show you later, but it's regarding with the addictions too. Family dysfunction, regretfully, the young people run away, and and get entrapped with this ping that promise them to have a good family, and they rarely get a sense of the family because they see the others victim as their siblings, and and they are together in that, and at the beginning they see the ping as the parents or as the boyfriends, or the good person that is going to rescue them. History of trauma and abuse, and that was so complicated working with human trafficking and survivors, because it's a history of trauma there. It's a complex one, and so that's a vulnerability there. Domestic violence victims, so they are so easy to get them. Okay, so because they want that charming person in their lives. They want to having someone who love them. And so, hello, that's a red flag and a good one for the perpetrator. Immigration status. So they, like we see the example of Mario, they take the passport, they, strengthen them, and so they can control them. And discrimination or racism, we can see that. We can see our population of lesbian, gay, transgender population, that they suffer for this, because the perpetrator know that. They know that they have been maybe rejected by the family, maybe rejected by the society as soon as they, identify themselves. So they can be suffering from discrimination and rejection from the family or the friends. So the perpetrator promised them, I'm gonna give you what they done, the what they didn't give to you, and reject you, and bingo, they go in sex trafficking or labor trafficking. Okay. So this is the example that I want to show you that was here in Florida. I don't like to talk much about perpetrator, and that's something bad about people who advocate for victims. We don't like to give a lot of publicity, but this is just for learning purpose. So this is Andrew Blindfield. He was in Florida. And he controlled 3 women, and that's very interesting. Many times we think about the human trafficking is about a big ring, a large ring of victims. No, this is just one guy who controlled 3 women, and these women were from 18 to 20, and they were a prostitute. They were selling themselves. Some of them have some no I would say no addiction, but they try drugs, but they just maybe one in a while. But they didn't do the prostitution to have drugs, just to survive and live. And there is one study in Spain that say that in prostitution, only 5% the women in that study say that they were okay of being prostitute. The rest, only 5%, the rest were saying that they were forced, or they were in poor condition, or that they had to survive by doing prostitution. So very interesting, that study. It was in Spain, and a study conducted in Spain. So this guy controlled these 3 women. He contact them online and say, hey guy, I can support you. I have experience. I think it's not safe for you. So we can work together. And then he promised them. So they say, okay, you're gonna give me house, you're gonna give me, so it was a long process, but he got the girls. And then he started giving them these prescription drugs to help them. And what happened that he sold the drugs to them for an amount that was super expensive, more than the real cost of the prescription that he was getting. And then the girls at the end go with a large amount of debt. And he said, between the food that I give you, the house and the medicines and the drugs, you need to bring more money. So rather than maybe that they prostitute one in a while, they were forced to prostitute more days, more hours, and to bring him more money to pay the amount. And they were so in deep with the drugs at the end that that they have to do it, because other way they don't have any form to get the prescription drugs. So he was the only sources. So they got Trump to commit sex acts for money for him. So he got caught, and I think he's spending 30 to 60 years in jail. But I just want to share the case because, first of all, it was just one guy and only 3 victims. And the way that he did it was based on vulnerability. Okay. And he also developed more in the needs for drug, because they were not at direct at the time that they start the relationship. Okay. And it was no, I just want to clarify, this is not just the first week or 2 weeks. The bonding can last 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. And as much as they are, the abuser realize that they are in bond, that he can force them, then start the force and the coercion. So this is not something that happened, that you say, well, why she didn't leave? Because maybe he didn't start in the first or 2 weeks. He takes time to realize when they are in a bond. Okay. So here we're going to see a video, and I just wanted you to focus on the kind of vulnerability that the victim have, the actions that the trafficker used, and the strategies, and what kind of human trafficking, was commercial or was labor, and in labor what type, was domestic or was a labor debt, so, and what kind of business. So like you see, it's a review that what have been discussing so far. Okay. Let me see if I can do this. Can you see it? Anyone can tell me because I cannot see it. You can see it.
No, I mean, showing nothing, just
Okay, thank you. Let me just see. I think it's this one. Now? Now, can you see it?
yeah, the only thing you need to do is hit play and that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, it has no sound.
Okay, let me just see what happened. Let me just see what happened. Oh, share sound. Okay, I got you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Jimenez. You have been so helpful with me today.
I am a labor trafficking survivor. I came as a religious visa. So I was there for the leader. I was not given a salary. I was told to take care of their grandchildren. I was with them 24 hours. So I was sleeping in the same room with the children. I got out from this situation in 2003. And then I was scared to be undocumented. When I came to Tamayan, they treated you as a warm family.
Damayan is an organization of Filipino migrant workers. The people that we serve work as nannies, elderly caregivers, house cleaners, personal assistants, and other work in private households. We're really looking to reach workers who maybe have experienced trafficking or who are in the best position to meet trafficked workers. Labor trafficking is when one person holds or obtains another person in coerced or forced labor. It's the individual employer or trafficker who's forcing, coercing, manipulating a worker. So the indicators that we see are usually of threats, passport and other identification theft. It's usually restricted movement, restricted communication.
For a case of trafficking, what we're usually going to be looking for are signs that the workers don't have a freedom to move about. They aren't getting paid for the work that they're performing. Maybe they don't have identifying documents. They're being made to live in substandard living conditions. They may be skilled or unskilled laborers, young or old, male or female.
I never heard them complain. You know, it didn't cross my mind that they were being abused.
When you'd ask the boys, how's it going, then none of them ever said, well, this happened to me or this happened to me or whatever.
We had a case, and it involved the parent exploitation of American workers, and they were adults with intellectual disabilities. They were transported from Texas to a turkey processing plant in Iowa. For approximately 35 years, these adults were working for a company for at least 40 hours per week, but only being paid $65 a month. They were hidden away from much of the world. These men were punished in cruel ways. And so after 35 or 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears, when these men were finally rescued, they had nothing to show for it. What we find in a case like that, even involving people with intellectual disabilities, is that the things that make them vulnerable are the very same things that you might see in a case involving foreign workers.
The same type of force and coercion that a shackle would be is the same kind of mental anguish they're going through with some of the things that a trafficker might threaten them with.
In order to build any kind of relationship, you have to go out to them. I'm talking about everything from working with the social service providers, the clinics, the churches, anywhere where labor trafficking victims may go for strength or for help. That's where law enforcement should be reaching out and proving that we're serious about helping.
The Illinois Migrant Legal Assistance Project provides free legal services to migrant and seasonal farm workers. When we do specific outreach, we go to labor camps. Many times they have basic questions like, where is there a church that might have a service in Spanish? And those open up lines of communication where they come to trust us and talk with us. Usually by the second or third time, you'll get a sense of, are there some deeper issues here that are going on?
I think it all starts by being a good listener and letting them know that you are going to try to do whatever you can to help.
I met my trafficker back in my country, Dominican Republic. They offer us job in the United States, working in hotels. When we came here, what happened is there was not such a job like that. They got a job in DVD manufacturing company. We already invest a lot of money to come, so we had to accept the job, and we did. But he treated us like we were no one. We were living in a one-bedroom apartment, and it was 3 people living there. My paycheck every week was like $39. When we were in that situation, people could see us. We were hardworking in that company. Nobody noticed anything. And then we met a Catholic charity person, and we explained her our situation. So she contacted one agent from ICE.
Ronnie had so many concerns. That was the biggest trust barrier to get over, to let him know that I am genuinely concerned for you and your friends and coworkers and for your families.
They made all possible to bring my wife and my 2 kids. I got a job thanks to the people that were out there to help me, but they changed our lives. I mean, they saved us. And I can tell you now, because I'm a survivor of human trafficking, yeah.
Okay, so let's go to process the information that we receive and okay, so what do you think? What do you think about the type of victims that we watch in the video, the actions that were used by the traffickers? I think we were able to watch 3 cases or 4 cases. So what do you think about the strategy? What type of human trafficking we could watch on the video?
Well, in terms of vulnerability, all the victims were poor with limited economic means. Some of them have impairments. They're really victims. I mean, they are in need. They have a common need, which is taking care of their families, get money to survive, looking for another vision of the world, another kind of world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other comments? Any other thoughts? Let's see. Thank you, Professor Jimenez.
But just to continue through the list over here,
Thank you.
traffickers, the strategies or actions that traffickers use were they give them promises. I'm gonna promise you, you're gonna have the world in front of you. You're gonna have a great job. You're gonna have a great life. Strategies human trafficker use, again, promises of those bring them. In terms of human trafficking, I think it was labor trafficking mostly, and businesses runs from farms to technological business. I mean, hospitality. So that give us an idea that trafficking can occur in any kind of business.
Thank you so much, Professor Jimenez. You were absolutely right. All of the answer. Thank you so much. And you were perfectly right. And I think you grasped everything that we have been discussing so far. And yeah, you were right. You see, the vulnerability for it doesn't have limit. They use everything that can make them easily to recruit the victims. So and that's what we have in order to stop this crime is to support the vulnerable, to provide prevention programs, to inform the community, also to pay attention anything that can be human trafficking in the community. So that's very important. I was so happy that the university brought this topic today because we as a community can together really grasp this, because our students, you can see, I mean, for my experience, they can be facing, poverty. They can, most of them, they can be immigrants, and having a kind of isolation, be alone here in the United States. Some of them have needs for life conditions. So, and some of them, regretfully, they have history of trauma. So as a Latino or as immigrant, also we face some discriminations and racism. So you see, I'm not talking about family dysfunctions, that we can have a high numbers of our students in that. So we have to, realize that it could be close to us. It could be there in our in our neighborhood, in our backyard, like we say. So so there is a campaign, the Blue campaign, that right now is promoting awareness in the college campus for the students, because regretfully, that's something that the perpetrators, the traffickers, they know here domestically, that it should be, a good camp. And it's not any bad guy going to the campus. It should be recruiting, one student who have friends and go and identify who could be the vulnerable in the close to them. So that's, very important that we understand that this problem can be close to us. So we already see the red flags in the video. So living conditions, we see in the two videos, two cases that they were in poor, bad conditions, and the working conditions, that could be hours and pay nothing or low or very little. So some of them, we see the video of the men in Ohio, that they even were physically and psychological control, and they don't have ability to leave home or workplace in most of the cases. Remember the first case of the lady. So there is no information. There is no information about the resources. Look at the last case when the guy was saying that finally through an organization he was able, because he didn't know, and people looked then as a hard worker and doing in a company, but no one knew it. So loss of control of one own identification document, the passport, like we see the examples in the video too. No personal possessions. They have worries about, maybe a family living in their own country. Largest debt that they spend to come here, or even, that maybe no one can take care of them. So lots of sense of time and space that happen a lot. So they don't know what city they are. They don't know the language. I remember one of my clients, she was from Brazil, and she didn't know the language well. And and the perpetrator, the trafficker, they keep the passport and everything. So she even didn't understand where she was. So working the commercial industry, one of the, of the idea is the word pin, but also could be the boyfriend. Also, it could be the manager. So that is going to give you the red flag that maybe that person is under sex trafficking. And like I say, no pay or pay very little. So like a Professor Jimenez was explaining to us the video. There are actions that can be in many similar ways in different cases. Okay. Any question? Let me see if I have anything in the chat. No. Okay, so we see that this crime, the human trafficking, really impact what we know about human rights. So we see that is everybody have rights to life, to have liberty and security. So that's kind of what we call the modern slavery. In no one can be forced to labor. No one can be, entrapped in a bonded labor for debt. So domestic servitude cannot be possible right now. So because that's again our main human rights, to have freedom, to choose where to do and have a fair salary. So we see this crime is associated with the violations of the human rights. Okay, and we as a society, we have to provide that social security, that environment that our vulnerables are going to be free of being victim of this crime. Okay, so it's not just violating a law, it's not a financial crime, it's a human rights crime. Okay. Okay, so we have been seeing so far how the victims, they can think about, and most of the time, in my experience, what the literature say, they develop a feeling of helplessness, shame, feel guilty, they blame themselves, how stupid I was, I didn't see this, they feel humiliation, and that was the reason that they spend years to open and look for help. So sometimes they feel afraid of the parents, what they're gonna say. My experience, they feel ashamed what their friends gonna be saying, and how I go involved in this. So so they don't understand the dynamics. So again, similar to victims of domestic violence, empower them by, giving the information, understanding of what happened to them. So we are going to give them the power back, and then put in a perspective who really has to be blamed for that. So suffering from shock and denial, so a symptom for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety and depression, where the mental health issues and addictions that I see more in my practice with the survivors. And again, this is a complex trauma, because most of them have already, suffering from different type of trauma before getting in the human trafficking. They suffer from sleep and eating disorders. They become addicted to drugs if they were not. And they really use their addictions as a method of control to cope with, but also the trafficker can use that as a way to control the victim. So most of them, they are flag affections, so that's detachment. They can be, emotional dumb, really. And it's really hard at the beginning, because they develop this traumatic bond with the abuser, with the trafficker. And sometimes, they portray in a positive way the trafficker. But we need to be compassion. We need to understand why they do this, and why they believe that. I will always say to my students, we need to try to put in the shoes of our client, what they have been facing, and the way that they survive. They survive and they cope with that is believing that that they didn't deserve that, and that could be type of love that they receive. Okay, so remember, the trafficking could be the boyfriend, the spouse, even the parent. Okay, even the parent. So beside these emotional effects, we also have the physical. So there are two main components when you work with with human trafficking victim survivors, is the physical and is the emotional. And this is two areas that can help you to identify, one person being a victim of human trafficking. And the physical, when you see, people with bruises, with any type of broken bones, scar, that that they cannot explain, that could be any, because the condition that they live, you can see a lot of illness, like a hearing problem, visual. They also can be tuberculosis, skin problems, disease. So because of, like I say, because of the living conditions, sometimes they live in containers, without no ventilation, crowded rooms, and so that can spread different type of infectious disease around them. For women, for men too, so we can have sexual transmitted disease, and in women we can have injury from sexual assault or forced abortions. So this is, information that we can see in our client when they go in, to receive services from us. We can see this. So here someone was saying this is about money. It's true. Just in 2017, in the International Labor Organization report that the forced labor in the private economic generated an estimated 150 billion in illegal profit per year just in human trafficking. So I estimated 40.3 million people were victims of modern slavery in 2016. There is new, I'm sorry, apologize, there is new statistic, but the difference is not too far. So we can see the high level of adult victims of labor trafficking are domestic workers, follows the construction sector. This is globally. Manufacturing, 50%, agriculture and fisheries industry, 11%. So migrant workers and indigenous people are particularly vulnerable to forced labor. And in sex trafficking, we have more statistics saying that the women and children are the most vulnerable here. And this is in United States, domestic statistic on human trafficking by Polaris. And just in this year, we got 22,326 identified. Remember that this is a crime like a domestic violence, and much as the crime victims that not all come out. So there are some survivors or victims hiding there that we don't know. But again, I just want to point this statistic at effect to understand which type is more seen there. Is sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and sex and work, both of them. And not specify. That's what the Polaris say, that they were not able to identify with the client. So what we have been learning so far, what we have been learning for the federal report is that self-reporting was the most common way cases to the police. So that's good. That's something that I was super, because it means like there are information that the survivors are getting. And so they are campaigning the airports, they are campaigning at the school, at the college campus. So that increased the number of self-reporting. Most traffickers operate independently of large-scale networks, like we saw the case before about this guy in Florida. It's not just, this huge ring of trafficker. It could be just one or two. Remember this famous case of Jeffrey Epstein? It was just one guy with this lady, trafficking the girls for him, and maybe she's foreign, I don't know. But so we have to be aware about that. Okay, sometimes we look movies, Hollywood, that is this type of drug dealers, but no, it could be anyone. The statistic, the federal report says something that 59% of the coercive tactics used by traffickers were not physical. Again, it's the grooming, this, bonding, and the fraud, that they use rather than the physical. And then they start with the coercing and threats. But at the beginning, like I start, it's not about kidnapping and taking. It's just more about grooming and then the coercion. This is very interesting. 59% of online recruitment in sex trafficking cases occur on Facebook. And that's the reason that the social media is a tool that the traffickers are using to cut our young population and the vulnerable. Okay, so again, we have to understand, because we have to explain our students and our children, the risk that they can find in Facebook or any social media. So if they are alert and with knowledge, remember our first slide, about Nelson Mandela saying that education is the way that we can, make changes. So educate our children and young people, so it's the best. So I will suggest it, with all of my respect to you, that if you can spend some time with your students, and with your young family, talking about human trafficking, explain to them the risk of being being victim of the traffickers, that is going to make a change of the world, and we can help to stop this crime. Okay, so even though we teach math, even though we teach English, take a time, that's going to be worthy for our society, and especially for our for our students, because that can happen any age, not only young, but also adults too. Here in Florida, for those who are in Florida, so we have some top sex trafficking places in Florida based on the statistics, the hotel, motel, commercial from brothers, online apps, unknown places, street-based, other places. For labor trafficking venues in Florida, we have domestic work, agriculture, sales teams in itinerary that can happen, restaurants, food services, and others. So the important thing here is, pay attention who work for you. So what type of company hire them, like we see in the video. So any company can be doing some type of, labor trafficking. So we have to be aware. So who could be the trafficker? So trafficker could be anyone, any race. Women's are usually the one who can recruit easily, because, if a man approaches to a girl, the girl maybe, remember if someone told her, be aware of the stranger, of the male, blah, blah. But a woman with a beautiful smile, young, so can catch easily the victim. So trafficker could be friends, could be family member, a stranger. And the same with sexual abuse, especially child sexual abuse. We find here that the abuser, it could be close to the victim. Okay, so regretfully, they use the trust to catch the victim. So, like I explained in through other slides, so it could be that boyfriend that is very close to the friend, the boyfriend, because he take advantage of the vulnerability, the lack of maybe family stability or trauma, and then portray the love that she always or he always wanna have. That friend that wanna help, maybe I want to support you with a house. I want to support you with money. I know where you can find the money. And then that friend connected with the pimp or the traffickers. And the boyfriend can start, by, like I say, by the honeymoon for a while, until he realize that, or is convinced that she's going to do whatever he asks. And when she say no, then he can use the physical and the coercion, and then she is under that situation. The Romeo pin is more when the boyfriend get in that stage, from using the physical coercion or the threats, but basically it's very close to that romantic relationship at the beginning. I have some cases that the boyfriend, just will say, let's go move together. I'm going to pay for everything. Don't worry. You don't have to work. And then, start paying for her clothes, for everything. And, at the time, then he starts saying, you know what, sweetie, I need you to start working. I have a perfect work for you. You are so good. Maybe you can just provide a companion, some of my friends, some guys. And then, that's the way that she, okay, fine. If you say that I can do that, yeah, you can go. And then from then, she say, oh, he wanna have sex with me too. Well, you can have it. I don't have problem with that. We can get more money. And then, that's the way that it could happen. That happened at least with some of my clients. So the gorilla ping is that case where he just kidnap her or use physical, to take the victim. Can use drugs, can use many things to force the victim to use sex trafficking. Or the employer, we see the videos, some good examples. It could be any company, and the can portray this a legal company, and just the company is using victim of labor trafficking for the profit. It could be family. We already talked about, some examples. And even the pastors, we have some cases of religious visa, immigrants coming, or even here in the United States, there is one famous pastor case that he has several wives, and then he, offers to the poor girls' families, that the girls can come to his house and help him, but he's gonna provide a good house, education, blah blah blah. At the end, this girl was allowed to come to his house for her grandmother. She allowed, and at the end, she was forced to work for the family, and without any pay, without no allowing her to go to the school and etc. At the end, he was prosecuted for human trafficking, labor trafficking in the case of the child forced. So there is another video here that I would like to share with you. We have time, about who is the trafficker. And I like this video for Jennifer Tectum. She passed away. She during the pandemic, and she had an overdose for drugs, and she passed. But she was a victim for many years. She survived, and I just want to share with you this short video because she's a testimony. She is providing a testimony, and I think that she did a good organization to help other girls that suffer like her. Okay, so let me see if I can do this. Oh, let me know if you can see.
You have to click on the arrow, the right arrow.
Now, can you see it?
No, ma'am. I think you have to click on the little arrow in the center of the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to do it this area.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. Can you listen? Yeah. Okay.
So I'd like to know, what does this image bring to your mind? See, typically, most people would think of how cattle are branded to mark them as goods and mark them as property of their owners. However, I think of slave brandings. It's been going on since the transatlantic slave trade, where Europeans and Americans, along with other slave masters, hot iron branded their slaves. Then in Christian Europe, we see Muslims who had branded Caucasian women as sex slaves. And then it kind of evolved a little bit to where in the Armenian genocide, the women that were taken captive were tattooed with brands on their face and hands in order to label them as sex slaves and or the wives of their captors. And then, of course, we know that the Jews that were brought into the concentration camps were tattooed with identification numbers. So in my mid-20s, I was leaving a very domestic violent relationship, and I was trying to rebuild my life. And then I met Prince Charming. He was amazing. You know, he made me feel so special and so loved, and he treated me like a queen, and he put me on a pedestal. It wasn't just financial and materialistic needs that he provided for me. More so, it was the emotional needs that I had and the voids I had from a lifetime of abuse. At the beginning of this relationship, I had designed a heart-shaped tattoo with an empty banner. Down the road, I wanted to put all the names of my children in this banner. However, I mean, he was so nice to pay for it. However, I did not know that he paid his friend to put his name in the banner of this heart. He justified this by saying, I want you to know how much I love you, how I will always be there for you, and I will always have your back. In that time frame, I also got 2 more tattoos, willingly. I got his name on my arm, and I got a little devil, which was a nickname, on the other arm. I did that willingly because I wanted to show my loyalty to him and my dedication to our relationship. The dependency on him in the relationship changed dramatically when he introduced heroin into the equation. It did not take him long to use the relationship and the dependency on the drugs to coerce and manipulate me into prostitution. That's when I realized the meaning of my heart-shaped tattoo. It turned into, you can never leave. I am always right behind you. So he has me start working the streets of Columbus. I ended up getting kidnapped by a fellow trafficker, drugged, taken out of the city. And when I finally escaped that situation, I ran back to my boyfriend. I needed him that bad. So I ran to him, you know, crying. And they drugged me, and they kidnapped me, and they sold me, and he slapped the taste out of my mouth and drugged me into the house by my hair. Later that evening, I was tattooed, property of his name above my vagina, because he thought he was losing power and control over me and wanted me to remember whose property that was. So there came a point where I wasn't meeting the quota that he wanted me to meet, bringing in the money that he wanted me to bring in. So he walked me down the street and sold me to some low-level drug dealers. Now, I don't know what he received from me, but I can tell you this. Globally, the average cost for a sex slave is $90. So I worked for them for a short stint, had some traumatic events happen to me, and I ended up back with this boyfriend. However, this time was different. See, my once Prince Charming, I knew now as my captor. And so I was broken and shattered from the life of enslavement that he had forced me into. So when he hit me, I would hit him back. I was combatant. So he taught me the most horrific lesson I had ever learned in my life. He sold me to the most violent gang in Columbus, Ohio. I was forced to work for them. It was at that time when I switched ownerships that I had to be rebranded. I had to be marked by my new owners. It started with their gang insignia and the name of their leader on my neck. And then it was promised there was about 12 of us, if we got loyalty as royalty across our back or in miscellaneous areas and showed our loyalty to this gang, that we would have increased privileges. Now, privileges for us were being able to have time to come in and get something to eat, or time to take a nap every 3 or 4 days, or maybe, just maybe, the ability to take a shower. So we willingly got these tattoos. What they turned into were threats of violence and promises that if we tried to escape, we would be killed, essentially. We were cattle, all of us. And so when I finally reached a life-threatening situation, I've been raped for 2.5 hours with a butcher knife and attempted to take my own life afterwards because I couldn't live like that anymore. It was at that point when I decided I had to either die or risk my life to leave my traffickers. And so I did. And it was a battle. It was hard enough trying to survive what I had been through, but every time I got in the shower, every time I looked in the mirror, the reflection I saw looking back at me was that enslaved person, that property, that cattle. And so I earned the money for my first cover-up, which was a tattoo of my choosing going over top of the demoralizing tattoo that I carried, that constant reminder. And that encouraged me and empowered me to the point where I wanted to start a grassroots nonprofit called Survivors, Inc. to pay forward the grace and mercy that was given to me, the liberation. And that was a very big risk for me, because to earn the money to give scholarships to these other survivors, I had to put my story out there. I had to face the judgment, the criticism, the questions of the public. I also had to face possibly my traffickers identifying me and looking for me. These are some of the brandings that we have helped cover up. It was a risk to start doing this, but it was also a risk when we started doing street outreach and reaching out directly to them to offer them help. That brought along another risk, because when they needed help, we had to intervene and aid their escape. But all the risks that we take are so worth it, because we not only get to be a part of them restoring their lives and restoring their bodies and taking this mark of violence and ownership and turning it into something that shows their strength, their growth, their courage, their survival. We risked everything and will continue to, because we are not cattle, we are human beings. Thank you.
I don't know how many times I have been seeing this video, but every time I feel so deeply in pain, because you know, this is the way, this is a survivor. She was a survivor, and that is the really reality. We are getting information for the first hand from a survivor. So I just want to listen your comment, especially because we didn't see discuss so far, you know, the way that she explained about being using these tattoos. Okay, so I just want to listen your comments. Okay, Professor McCarthy, she wrote here what to look for in sleep disorders. Wow. So any comment regarding with Jennifer about her testimony? How do the traffickers operate? How do you see in the video what Jennifer was sharing, the way that the her traffickers operated, what they do? Yeah. I would like to, Professor Dr. Carrasquillo say that the video is shocking, new way to take a look of trafficking. Absolutely, Dr. Carrasquillo, Doctora Carrasquillo. Professor McCarthy, she point out about the value, the low value, the $90 that these traffickers sell the victim. I trying to read the comments just to, oops. Why the, so,
It is very interesting how these traffickers can start. I mean, like like a boyfriend, like a very close friend to you, and then turns to be a trafficker. I have a question for you, ma'am. Do you have figures specifically for Florida? Because I saw the slide that where we can find these, but do you have figures or any place where we can get figures specifically for Florida?
yeah, you mean statistics? Yes, yes, I have it. I can, if you give me your email, I'm gonna write my email so I can send to you. My email is Denias1. Professor Jimenez, please send to me an email and
I
okay.
already sent you my email.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Thank you. I see it. Perfect. So, okay, okay, perfect. I just wanna. Sorry.
I also agree with the comment of Maria Landaeta, Professor Landaeta, in regards of how they use the tattoos to tell a story. Because the tattoos, those tattoos tells a story.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm just because I know that after the meeting end, I don't have access to the chat, so I'm taking photo of the emails. But you are right, Professor Jimenez. So, and that's something that is another indicator. So these tattoos with names that portray a sense of belonging or love, we can explore, like open-ended questions with the survivor or the victims, oh, I like your tattoo, so it's very interesting. And you see if the person explained to you or not, or the explanation that they give to you, the expression, the language body that they can provide to us. So that could be an indicator. And then the suggestion is not to push the victim to talk of the potential that we have any concern, because we can put, like I say, the traffickers always have someone close to them monitoring them. So but at least we can support them in a sense like, oh, if you wanna talk to me, I'm here. Oh, there is some, if we know the agency, so that there is some hotlines that can support if you need help to talk. So we can support them in that way. But we have to be aware that they can be, monitoring. In my experience, I always, when I see this tattoo, because I used to work with a lot of gang members from MS13. They were my my clients as a counselor. And so as a requirement, I have to be trained as a, you know, how the gangs operate and all of these tattoos meaning and colors and clothes fashions, everything. So yeah, first of all, because I help you to connect with them, you know, talking the same language with them, but I also to identify them at the beginning as a way to, you know, to connect with them. It's the same with the survivor for human trafficking. And Jennifer was explaining to us, you know, even when they leave and they feel okay, now I'm safe, and they look at them in the mirror and they continue with this sense of belonging, and that's the sense of they are a property of someone else. So that's what I love, you know, this organization that she founded about support and cover and this tattoo with other tattoo that were colorful and life meaning, and so and then give, you know, money for scholarship for the survivors. But yeah, the traffickers, they can use many ways to connect with the victim, and one of them is the grooming, that love, that affection, that sense of belonging. Like as she was describing, the first tattoo is about a heart, a love. Um, and look at the way that she went back to that trafficker because of this bonding that she has. And then is the coercion, the control piece, the physical, and even the not physical, okay, money, self-help, etc. um and break this cycle is really a challenge for anyone who doesn't understand the dynamic of the human trafficking. Oh, there is a here. I went to a training also, and they were saying that now they are using this tattoo with numbers, and that was the number of victims that were working for that traffickers. So that's something that, you know, that we also have to share with our young population, you know, or you know, to be aware about tattoos and the meanings. If they want to do it, they need to understand also how other people are using tattoos in order to perpetrate these type of crimes. Any other questions? Thank you for participating. I'm gonna try to read all of the comments that you make, but I think I got it. I got most of them.
More than a question, I think this is just a comment. At the beginning, you were showing how education, you know, it's a motor for change, and I would add that communication also it's a motor for change besides the education. I'm also a social worker, and I've seen how important it is to psychoeducate others about the cycle of violence or how to bring that to their awareness. Sometimes people doesn't know, you know, what's going on. When you were mentioning about the pastor, I had a client that had given the pastor the social security of their kids. She had 10 kids and she could never recover that, and I will always tell her, you got to call because that is fraud, right? And she never received any money for, you know, their yearly taxes. So I always remember that story as something that, you know, it wasn't coercion, maybe, you know, hiding because she kept going to the church that she attended to that service. But, you know, I had to bring to her awareness that that wasn't correct. And a lot of those situations happen with the willingness of the person because the person is vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
That help.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. You are right. That is that's important. Not only educate ourselves, but also communicated that knowledge, that information, empower you know the survivor or the victims. Um, Yeah, that that example that you say absolutely could be fraud there, take advantage of the vulnerability of the person, absolutely. And like Dr. Professor Jimenez was saying, in one of the cases, so the best way is to explore, because one thing could be another thing hiding there. So one thing that it could be just kidnapping or sexual assault threat, it could be at the end human trafficking. And the good important thing to see the difference here, really focus for me, is to keep the client safe, the person safe. But at the end also, if we are able to identify internal services, there are so many services and programs for survivors of human trafficking. So if we are able to identify, so they are going to be able to receive the right services. So that's also another piece for those who work with this population. So for the victim needs, so we have like three main goals. The one that is in crisis, so we have shelter, safety, law enforcement notification, Medicare, clothing, food. Like I say, because this is so complex crime, so we have to be careful, even if we believe that we are, expert. We have to be careful when we suspect, have suspicions about anyone being victim of human trafficking. The best way is to contact the law enforcement, because they have the resources to rescue the victim safely. I remember once in New Jersey, there was a lady with a baby. She was immigrant. She was begging, and in New Jersey, uh, they were very strict that anyone begging, collecting money with a child, it could be neglect, and the child could be removed from you if you are in that situation. So I remember leaving this Starbucks coffee shop and see the lady, and I saw that she was a Latina, and I say, hey, listen, that here in New Jersey it's illegal to do that, and you can be for expose the child, you can be facing you know um, child neglect. So I just helping you to understand. And she was so nervous, but I cannot move from here. As soon as she told me I cannot move from here, and even though she can be, jeopardizing her situation with the child, I say, oh my God, that could be a victim. So I said, okay, fine, no problem. And I left. And when I got in my car, I moved. And then when I was far a little bit from her, I called 911 and I report. And then, New Jersey, you report, you can have back, information, asking you for more information. So I asked, and they say, yes, possibly she was a victim of human trafficking, and that was not her child. So that's, if I recognize some sign when she was saying, I cannot move from here, I have to stay. So that coercion, that fear that she had was beyond anyone asking, for money. So, but what I'm trying to say is the first step is not jumping and saying, that I'm going to help you, I'm going to give this. So it's better to leave for the sake of the person and contact the law enforcement. So in crisis, well, with that, what we have to provide the victim is the safety and the emergency shelter, and medical care or clothing. And the short term, it could be counseling, therapy, and there are so many issues that the client can have. Trauma-informed care, because we need to empower them. We need to really understand that the past of the history that the victim has, and of course provide the services that they need, the choices that they really decided to have. So legal assistance, immigration assistance, life skill. So many of them, they don't have it. They start very young. So we need to provide employment, education, and we have to be ready, like when we work with domestic violence survivors, that this back and forth, I mean, it could be the same. The statistics say that it could be 7, 8 times, went back. Look at Jennifer testimony. She went many times back to the traffickers. So that's something that we need to work with a client and the understanding of this dynamic. Long-term social and economic self-sufficiency, that's what the resources, the research, the studies say that that is important for them to keep in the maintenance, the process of the change to away from the human trafficker. Okay, any comments? Okay, that's something as a social worker I cannot avoid to promote social justice. And so we have to, if we could follow the recommendations of the principle of human rights. So human rights violations are both the cause and the consequences of trafficking in person. For that reason, we have to protect the human rights and to prevent and to put the end to this crime. So we have to do it with dignity. For that reason, we cannot penalize the victim. We have to recognize and understand that they are victims. No matter how horrible we say, or we see what they do for the abusers, we need to understand that they are victims. And we need to provide the services as a victims. So as a conclusion, and I'm gonna go with Professor Silvia. So how we can help, we can promote, communicate what we have been learning today, this morning. But I will encourage, pay attention to the people that you really know and interact with, because this is something that can happen to anyone. And I noticed in Orlando how many people we have been receiving as a refugee from Venezuela, from Haiti, from other countries, and we need to help them, to put themselves in this horrible crime because they are vulnerable, and we see the vulnerability that they can have. It's about context and proximity, understanding trafficking. I think we did a couple of exercises and videos and help us, to grab this. And like I said before at the beginning, I'm very happy and willing to answer any other question that you have or comments. If you want to send to me comments by email, I will be really grateful and answering as soon as I can. So we have to understand that human trafficking occurs due to societal problems. So it's a problem in our society: discrimination, poverty, trauma, oppression, corruption. So I remember when many years ago we started with this boom of trauma-informed care. I don't know, was 2005, 2006 was a boom. And I say, oh my gosh, really, really say that's real. Because if we have to pay attention, empower the survivor, but pay attention the history of trauma that they have. So we have to see that stop human trafficking before it occurs through system changes. That's crucial. So we have to go to social policies. You have to do research about this, continue. We cannot stop because every day is something new, a new strategy, a new way that they want to do this. Have conversation with the students, families, and friends. That one suggestion from one of our professors today. And support legislation organization. We cannot be without saying. So that's the way that we can make possible to stop human trafficking. And no matter where you go, if you have opportunity to go to the other country, so we have to learn from other countries too, because like I say, with this globalization, we are in, getting good ideas, but bad ideas too. So I'm gonna just finish this morning with one positive statement for Martin Luther King Jr. and something that I agree with Professor Silvia. The silence of good people is more dangerous than the brutality of bad people. Like she said, better than me, educated and communicated is the right way to help to prevent this type of crime. Okay, thank you so much. I don't know if you have questions, comments, but I'm just open to hear from you now. Thank you, Dr. Welke and Professor Jimenez.
I just want to make a comment. This was a great presentation, a lot of very good information. I congratulate you. Great presentation, man.
Thank you, Professor Jimenez. Thank you for your participation. I learned from you guys today. I'm trying to read the chat in case that we have any question, comments. Besides the thank you. Okay. Well, if you don't have anything to ask or say, I'm just giving for close this presentation. Thank you so much to the university for inviting me. And like I say, I'm very welcome to receive email from you. You have any comment or question after. Okay. Thank you. Bye.